Amazing. So today we have on the SEO Leadership webinar a very exciting and interesting guest, Richard. He is the Principal Performance Marketing, Data Science, and Tech SEO at Sanity IO. Richard, thank you for starting me off with a tongue twister, but very
No worries.
excited to have you on today. And yeah, thank you so much for coming on. How are you keeping today?
Yeah, good. Yeah, I went to Hive Manchester last night, which is a new event.
Nice.
It was really good. So yeah, kind of on a high from that today.
How was it?
Yeah, it was great. It was a bit different from a normal event where it started at 2 o'clock in the afternoon and then went
Yeah.
on till 8 in the evening. So yeah, it was quite nice not have to get to Manchester, kind of get the 7, 8 o'clock train or whatever, and actually kind of
Yeah.
take your time a little bit.
Awesome. Yeah, we saw a lot of it. Charlie was building up a lot from it. So, yeah,
Mm.
excited to see all the great things that were coming from that. Richard, I just wanted to sort of kick things off by asking you, for our audience's sake, just a little bit about your background and how you got into SEO and how you got to where you are in your current position.
Sure.
So, yeah, if you could take us through a quick little journey on that.
Yeah, great. So I started off as a marketing assistant at an environmental consultancy, like back in I think 2008,
Mm,
and they needed a new website and they didn't have any money. So I thought, right, I can give this a go.
yeah.
So I taught myself HTML, and obviously because they didn't have any money, SEO was kind of a really important part of the brief, getting traffic organically. So that's kind of where I started to get a bit obsessed with SEO. So I created the website, and I thought, right, I can do this. I'm going to go and get into the SEO industry. And I handed in my notice because being young, you don't really kind of think about consequences as much as maybe you do when you're older. I thought, right, I'll go and get a job. And remember, I said it was 2008.
Mm,
So the
yeah.
credit crunch was literally about a week later or something. So I ended up, I think I was out of work for about 3 months. But I
Mm,
built my own little website in the meantime. And ended up kind of managing to catch the attention of an SEO consultancy called Blue Claw. And they took me on. They were impressed. I think I had #1 ranking on local search for marketing Sheffield with my
oh,
little website.
nice.
Nice.
So I think they were just impressed. I think that someone actually knew what SEO was because they were interviewing a lot of young people that are just turning up and like actually had no idea even what it was.
Yeah.
Which I've experienced since as well, kind of interviewing sometimes junior people for like graduate positions and things, which is quite funny. But yeah, so I ended up getting a job with them, and then I think the week before I joined, there was basically an SEO team of 2 there already, and they both left. So I
Okay.
joined as the SEO team, and I think the company was probably only about 5 or 6 people at the time. So I had
Mm,
literally no idea kind of what I was doing really. I just sort of done my own hobby kind of stuff. So I think I went in I did a bit of a technical audit of every website and went in and we actually had access to the back end of all these websites, just like the file server. So you could go and make whatever changes you wanted. And I ended up sort of making some changes to the access some sites trying to kind of solve the issue of the fact they had duplicate www and non-www websites and ended up taking one down. So that that was great. Yeah, it just kind of went on from there really. So that was a really interesting position though, because I think we ended up hiring someone else who joined about 3 or 4 weeks later. And it was a real baptism of fire, that role, because there was no client
mm,
services. At the time, we were kind of buying directory submissions and article submissions and things like that. It was back in sort of 2009 by this point.
mm,
And you get kind of disgruntled clients calling up every day, kind of from day one, and you having to kind of talk to them on the phone and I was like 23, sort of no real world experience, no idea of handling kind of disgruntled people really. And
mm,
yeah, I think it really actually that role in particular, because it was made me so uncomfortable, made me kind of so it was a real baptism of fire. It definitely kind of helped my growth, I would say, probably more than
mm,
any other,
Mm.
just because it was thrown right in at the deep end. And then from there, I went to Cuba and Sheffield. I managed a small team there. They're a really great agency. They're kind of more of a integrated agency, so I kind of learned more about kind of website builds and migrations and things there.
okay.
And then ended up at Epiphany after that. So that was 2011. And Epiphany was also great. Unfortunately, it doesn't exist anymore. It's kind of, it was rolled into J-Wing and the brand was retired. But they were really at the forefront of the industry where, I went from buying directory submissions and article submissions at Blue Claw to doing these kind of big creative pieces at Epiphany to try and sort of attract links. And I think they were the first agency in the industry to do that kind of approach. So yeah, it learned a hell of a lot there. And met some great people and some great leaders as well. And then from there, where did they go after that? Oh, yeah, that was to the Simpson Millar after that. So Simpson Millar was kind of more of a marketing role. So that was more kind of full marketing mix. Sort of did a radio ad and things, trying to kind of connect search to kind of other channels. And that was a really interesting experience as well, where you were kind of part of two teams in a way. You're part of the digital team and the marketing team, and then also I worked in particular with the holiday claims department. So I was basically part of these two teams, and sort of having to sort of navigate my way kind of through that, which was really kind of, again, kind of helped in my growth, I would say. And then after that, I went to Kin and Carta. Well, it was Amaze at the time. I don't know if you've heard of them. So they changed to become Kin and Carta probably about a year after I went there.
Okay, I know them. Yeah.
They are a massive agency, all sorts of different disciplines, more consultancy kind of focus compared to Epiphany, which was more kind of doing the do kind of. You give us a retainer and we'll do all the work for you. Amaze was more kind of hourly rates, kind of more consultancy. So yeah, learned a lot there. And then moved on from there to Sanity, which is where I am now, which is absolutely awesome. Based in Norway, fast-moving tech company. Probably never learned so much in my life. From sort of, I do a data science degree alongside kind of my work for the last 3 or 4 years, and I've got to kind of put that into action here, get into BigQuery and all sorts of stuff like that.
Awesome.
So yes, that's where I am today.
Nice.
Robin, do you want to take it away with your first question?
Yeah, I was going to make a joke and say you joined Sanity, and it sounds like you've kept your sanity so far.
Yes,
but by the sounds of it, you spoke a lot of your deep end experience when you first got into the industry, and something that has become a hot topic now is the need for soft skills and the need for SEOs to be able to handle clients and actually have those necessary skills. And I almost want to say you didn't have a choice when it came to developing those soft skills, but is it something that you sort of foresaw when you were entering the SEO space or wanted to enter it? Is soft skills were extremely important, and is it something that came naturally to you, or did you have to sort of work on it?
Not at all. It didn't come naturally to me. So I was actually thinking about this morning, and I remember actually my public speaking skills were so bad, I think early days, that when I was at Cuba, they put me on a public speaking course, and that was all designed to kind of build up your confidence, like in a safe space.
Awesome.
And I couldn't do it. I was the only person that couldn't do it, and I had to go home. And I could totally forgotten about this. But I then went from there to kind of speaking at Brighton SEO, probably within like 3 or 4 years.
Wow.
And it just came from just like this weird, stubborn refusal to I didn't want to accept that I couldn't do it. Like other people can do this, why can't I? And I had some really tough experiences. Like I had some terrible talks, shaking with notes in my hand, mind blanks, like couldn't do it. But I just kept, for some stupid reason, putting myself in that position. And now when I kind of think about it, it's really important to try and separate where you are right now in terms of, you've had a horrible experience, and thinking more long term. The more horrible experiences you have, the better you're going to get, and you just have to keep going through it to get better. And I don't know why I could have quite easily just given up, I think. And I think it is really important to try and put yourself in those kinds of positions, because it is where growth really comes from. And I don't know what type of personality someone is to kind of keep doing that, knowing they're really bad at it. You have to go through it.
Yeah, and I suppose it's something that you don't really realize is actually quite difficult until you start to do it. I mean, people say like, "Oh, your clients, absolutely awesome. I can interact. I can speak publicly," until you actually have to do it, and then it becomes a little bit more interesting.
The day before you're kind of, or even the week before, you start kind of thinking about it, thinking, "Why did I read?"
Yeah. Oh, no, but that's very cool. Yeah.
You speaking of growth, actually, one thing that really stood out to me in your career progression was that you had a lot of opportunities with your teams that you were working with and your companies to sort of exercise your skill sets and experiment a lot. And naturally, there were fewer SEOs. I think the market was much thinner back in 2008 than where it is now. So the sort of level of responsibilities that execs and assistants have right now versus back then is the line is much thinner and the margin's much smaller. One of the ways that we've sort of tried to tackle this is to highlight the importance of side projects. But how do you sort of ensure with your teams that are working under you to just be able to take that some responsibility and also just grow rather than sort of stay in a checkbox sort of format?
I think it comes from them to some extent, where there's a willingness on their part to kind of volunteer for things that kind of help them grow. I don't think you can kind of push someone to do kind of anything they don't want to do. But in terms of kind of helping them and supporting them, I guess it is kind of sharing your experiences, like I've just done there. I haven't actually ever told anyone about that experience of having to go home from that that conference. And I think it is kind of, you've got experience of kind of going through kind of pain or whatever to grow, and I think the more you do that and you you inspire people, they're going to kind of put themselves forward for things as well, and kind of think, he was really bad at that, I can do that.
Awesome. Rob?
Yeah. Just how you made the jump from being a executive, and then I saw an analyst as well somewhere in the mix. How did you make the jump to becoming management? Did you yourself think, I need this, or did someone actually identify and say, "Oh, we need him"?
I think nowadays there's more of an understanding that there should be two different career paths. You should be able to kind of but kind of do it for the biggest brands and the biggest, best projects, or you become a manager. 10 years ago or 15 years ago, that wasn't the case. In order to progress, you had to become a manager. And I was really bad at it at first. I think I am better now. And I think an important part of getting better is kind of you develop more empathy as you get older. I was first a manager of 24 people, I think, at 24 or 5 people. And I was really bad at kind of feedback. And I used to kind of delegate work, and then they would do 90% of it, and I added the extra 10%, and all this kind of work would build up on my desk. And I was really bad. And then as I've got older, I've got a lot better at delegating, a lot better at kind of really understanding people. I think a big part of getting older is when you're young, you're very kind of tunnel visioned about work. Think about kind of wider sort of life and life skills kind of as much. So I think I just, that was the only way to progress. Nowadays I may not have kind of gone down that route. But it was the only way to kind of feel like you were progressing in your career at the time.
Yeah. And is that something that you sort of just learned as you went along? I don't want to say the hard way, but did you have a mentor that sort of helped you navigate the management space? Or was it just something that you had to figure out on your own?
I had a really great manager, to be fair. But he was more, I enjoyed his management because he was quite challenging and questioning, and I liked that because I'm quite a deep thinker. So quite often he'll have the same questions that I've already thought about, which is quite reassuring. And then also, if he's got a different question, it kind of makes you think. yeah, in terms of kind of mentoring and management, maybe not so much. So yeah, it was kind of me sort of figuring things out, and yeah, it probably took me a bit longer than it could have done.
Okay.
You know, I bought some books and things. I've still got some on a bookshelf here. But yeah, like it's very different in real life. So you
Oh yeah, definitely.
Just to sort of wrap up the topic of soft skills, one of the sort of hot questions that we've been asking and trying to explore right now is how to properly assess and evaluate soft skills for candidates that are coming to join your team. And it's considerably more difficult than just seeing hard skills on paper. So, are there any approaches that you look for when you're bringing on candidates, or if you are looking to grow your team? Are there any particular things that you would tackle to look for those as soft skills or assess those soft skills, or do you include that in your training?
So I think, you know, if you've got great soft skills, you can kind of almost do anything really. You can be taught the role. You can be taught SEO. So I think soft skills are really important. It is kind of more that way round. Obviously, you know, if you're looking for a senior position, they have to have the experience and the knowledge as well. But soft skills do go a long way, particularly for junior positions. And I think it is about sort of testing problem solving skills and presentation skills within that that kind of assessment period. I think those are kind of the two real key ones. I think it's probably more difficult to understand how someone works in the team without kind of getting them on board first. That's more difficult to assess. But yeah, like I think presentation and problem solving are kind of the two absolute sort of key ones.
And then on the topic of onboarding as well, do you how has your onboarding style sort of like evolved? I think especially working with Sanity at the moment. How does when you're bringing on a teammate, how does your onboarding look?
So we have a checklist of things to cover off, things to read, videos to watch. Sanity is quite a complicated product. So, you know, we have videos about how it works kind of from a really sort of simple sort of point of view. And then we get them around the organization as well. So we'll set up meetings with kind of key people that either they need to know in terms of their role, they're going to be working closely together, or, you know, someone that might share similar interests that would be good to kind of introduce them to. And then there is kind of a bit of a onboarding sort of mentor as well. I think that's been more the case at kind of previous roles where we've had like a mentor that might be someone from a different department that kind of like helps them settle in. In terms of, from my point of view, I think a really important thing is to kind of get them bought into the strategy, the vision and the direction in the first couple of weeks, and kind of regularly catch up with them about that, because for every single organization, it's very different when you peek under the curtain compared to what it is from the outside. And I think it's really important to kind of reassure someone and keep them on board kind of in those first 3 weeks where they're seeing that things are probably a bit messier than they realized, which is always the case. So yeah, I think it is kind of also getting their feedback as well, because they're seeing things from fresh eyes, seeing that kind of messiness. And then after 3 or 4 weeks, they then stop seeing it. They then become assimilated. So I think it's really important to kind of get their feedback and views and stuff in the first couple of weeks as well.
Yeah, that's really important. Actually, a great point as well. Just quickly on the topic of mentorship, though, are you guys? How is Sanity set up? Is it an in-office or hybrid, remote?
No, so it's hybrid for some. So the headquarters is in Norway, in Oslo. Then we've also got San Francisco office. So for the majority, it's remote fully.
And then so if someone's getting appointed a mentor, how does that sort of process look? Do they check in, I guess, every day or once a week, or how does that happen?
Yeah, so it is different from, you know, if it was a hybrid role, you know, you'd maybe have like in the first week, like a lunch or something. It is a bit different here. It's kind of more, it's
check-in.
A bit more formal, more kind of on screen, which is, you know, a bit of a shame, but we have the ability to kind of go over to Oslo usually within the first kind of month or two to meet people. So that's kind of a key part of the experience.
Awesome. Robin?
That's very cool. I am very interested to know a little bit more about your combination of SEO and data science. I mean, it's a niche within a niche. So how did that sort of come about? I've dealt with each one on their own, but never in combination. So I'm very interested to hear how that happened.
So I was always heavily into Excel and kind of creating, kind of innovating, I guess, in terms of like workflows in Excel. And I always wanted to code, but I never really got around to it. Then eventually, I think after 5 years, I started to kind of actually write some Python, and then thought, I've always liked playing around with numbers, and thought, right, I'm going to sign up. I think I had a holiday. You know, when you're on holiday, sometimes you're a little bit bored and kind of I think every big decision that's I've made that's kind of been a bit crazy, like signing up to some things or whatever, is always on holiday. Like sat around the pool thinking, I'm a bit bored. What should I do with my life? So I signed up to like this data science degree. And then, you know, data's always been really important for SEO in terms of kind of everything that I've done has always been data led. So it's just been able to kind of, add much more rigor to that, I guess. And with also the kind of the Python side of things, automation and stuff like that. So a big part of my role has actually been automation and AI. I think I was involved in the AI side of things probably a couple of years before ChatGPT kind of came along, like with clustering and stuff like that, and BERT and
That's
all
a
that.
massive asset, though. Massive asset to be able to do those things, especially in this time that we're in, when it's becoming more of a thing to be able to leverage it and navigate it. So, very, very cool.
Yeah. But I think balancing that with being a leader can be sometimes quite difficult, because you can get quite deep into things. I always found that with spreadsheets as well. Like when you've looked at a spreadsheet for 3 hours and then you have to become human again, that's sometimes
hello, what?
So that's something you have to get better at kind of over time as well, I think, is kind of coming out of kind of the deep kind of code and stuff like that, and becoming more of a social person again.
I must say it's very rare to find someone who can and does do both, and switches, from being super technical and like in coder mode to then, going to be more people person and leading and stuff like that. So very, very interesting combination, and I think a very special one, actually. There are not a lot of people out there like that.
So when you were working with an AI before ChatGPT came out, were you just sitting with your popcorn watching the world sort of explode?
So ChatGPT came along when I was on parental leave.
Okay.
So my son George had just been born, so I was sat there kind of thinking, oh, how's this going to go? And I couldn't get as involved in it as obviously I would like to have done straight off the bat. But I think I'd already just done a talk at Brighton SEO because it came along in December 2022. I did a talk in Brighton about I think it was GPT-J, which is like a open source version of the GPT models, and about how you could use that to kind of, you could train it using like labeled data from getting people to use the search rater guidelines and saying like, this is high quality, low quality, and then kind of classifying it. So I remember thinking, oh well, that's kind of down the train now. Something's come along that's going to make that talk a little bit obsolete. But yeah,
everything moved quite fast when it did come out. I wanted to sort of just actually, Robin transitioned quite nicely into this next topic that I wanted to bring in, which was niches. And you worked for a previous law firm, or a company that offered worked within the law firm niche. Do you have any tips to other SEOs that are, especially, I guess, SEOs? And were you a tech SEO at the time at the law firm?
No. So I kind of managed a team. It was more full marketing mix. It was kind of whatever was needed in order to get leads, basically.
Richard was everything. He was everything.
Do you have any tips to, I guess, then, in general, to SEOs that are looking to progress in their career, but also niche down at the same time?
Yeah, that's a difficult one. I think if you want to, get into a niche, then you need to become an expert in that niche. And if I'd stayed in the law world, I probably would have ended up doing some kind of legal qualification to some extent to really kind of understand, and probably to also gain the respect of the people you're working with, because unless you are a lawyer, they won't necessarily kind of listen to your ideas. So yeah, I think really kind of understand the niche that you're going into and do some kind of qualification, I think would be, if you need to, would definitely be worthwhile.
And what was your experience like working within the law niche? Did you enjoy it, or how was the relationship with law niches, with law firms and SEO?
Yeah, it was very different, because I went from basically agencies to a law firm, and I was wearing a suit, every day, shirt and tie. That's what everyone did. I don't know if things have changed since COVID a bit, but so I had to go out and buy some suits again, which have now don't fit me, so that was a waste of time. And then yeah, it was just so different. And then I did feel like maybe there's a bit of a perception of kind of particularly kind of maybe lead generation where you're seen as a little bit behind other niches, other kind of businesses like retail or whatever in terms of SEO. So I think, yeah, be prepared that you might need to sort of change people's perceptions that actually you can be doing innovative things kind of at the forefront of the industry, kind of in-house at kind of more of a professional services. But yeah, it was so different. An agency, you've got kind of maybe music playing, you can wear what you want, t-shirts. It is quite a big change to go into something that's sort of very much kind of professional services.
Did it? What was sort of the attraction for you to move into a law niche?
It was the marketing mix side of things. So it was kind of being able to expand outwards and not just be SEO. I do feel like quite a lot of my career has been trying to branch out from just SEO, because SEO isn't really a thing in isolation anymore anyway. You can't do just SEO. It's always been a combination of different disciplines. And I think the further in time we go, the more that becomes the case. Like, you need to do UX, which I think we haven't really considered as much, which was quite a big talk, a good conversation at Hive Manchester last night. So yeah, I've always wanted to branch out, and I've never liked to be pigeonholed kind of. So yeah, that was kind of my attraction, was being able to manage a team, and then find myself kind of like doing a radio ad or doing kind of all sorts of other creative things that weren't just the 3 pillars of SEO.
Awesome. Yeah, that's very interesting. And I think just to round it off, being in the role that you are in currently at Sanity, we obviously wanted to try and juice that as much as possible, and ask you your sort of insight on any tips that you could give to SEOs that are going into leadership positions that have to be client-facing, or alternatively have to pitch to C-suites or their higher-ups. You have any tips from working with an internal team and sort of having to break that barrier to speak to clients and higher ups?
So with clients and higher ups, I always thought the most important thing is managing the narrative of what you're doing. So you've got a strategy, you kind of relate everything back to that and how it's helping the business. And you need to manage that, make sure that everything's kind of consistent over time. It's very difficult. It's something that I found working with clients and being more of a CS role is kind of managing with the client, right? This is what we said we were going to do 6 months ago. This is what we've done. This is why we did it. Things have maybe changed slightly, so we might need to change direction. But yeah, telling kind of a simple story. I think it's a very underrated skill, but it's probably one of the most important for working with higher ups and clients.
And how do you sort of how has that sort of developed within your own, I guess, experiences having to communicate with clients and higher ups?
So I think it is looking at kind of the story that you're telling them, and is it consistent? What did you say kind of a month ago? Is it people have good memories, and you can't suddenly kind of start talking about something completely different that hasn't been raised before. So I think it's kind of being introspective and reviewing kind of what you're doing and making sure that you're being consistent.
Cool, I love that. Robin, do you have one last question before we want to end up?
It was more of a joke, but I was looking at some of the customers that Sanity has, and I'm just thinking, do you get free stuff? Do you get discount codes? It's very nice.
I haven't personally, but I think some people close.
Well, this is the request.
Yeah.
Engineers and stuff might get some, but yeah, not me, unfortunately.
Okay, awesome. But yeah, Richard, thank you so much for joining, and we hope to see you speaking at Brighton again soon for an update on the AI and everything as well. And yeah, it was really insightful, very interesting all-around experience, and we loved picking your brain about almost anything and everything. So yeah, we want to just tell everyone that is listening, if you want to find Richard, I will link his LinkedIn in our YouTube comments, or as well, you can find him in our LinkedIn captions. And yeah, Richard, thank you so much for joining. We are excited to see where your career takes off and directs you next. And excited to see all the exciting things that are coming from Sanity as well. And have a great weekend, and we will chat soon.
Yeah, thanks a lot for having me both.
Bye.
Pleasure. Bye.